Okay, we'll get that one and get that one. And I always like to get my highlighter or marker up and running. Okay, estimate process. A couple of things, guys, we're going to be talking about when we do. As if you remember, we talked about the estimating versus bidding, and you guys are familiar with that one. What's the difference? Anybody knows what the difference between estimating and bidding? The profit, your profit. So estimating the process, how much is it going to cost you? Bidding the process, how much are you willing to sell it to the customers? What's the difference between the two? Profit. Would you like 5% profit, 10% profit? So that's what we're going to be talking about. Um, must be selective. Why you must be selective in the jobs that you bid on? You will be a fool if you are CE Electric and you go bid on a stadium. You don't have the manpower, you don't have the expertise, you don't have the knowledge of managing that project. So you have to be selective. You'll see a lot of jobs, guys, in the market. You have to select the project that you have a chance of getting it when you bid on it. How to prepare the estimate, that's what we're going to be talking about. You guys are doing it with your friend Chad. In a second, you started doing the takeoff. What to do if you do not understand the blueprints. Estimating step number one, Karen, when you're estimating is you look at the blueprints, the drawing, and the specification. What do you do if you don't understand something on the blueprint and the specification? Common sense. What would you do if you're not the designer? Right? You call the engineers. Right? That's the first thing you need to do. Call the engineers, the people who put it together, before you do take off on it. Estimating forms and sheets. Adam, the single most important things about estimators are they are well organized, methodical. So you need to use forms and worksheets. And how to use them. There's a lot of forms, guys. And this chapter is going to be going over that you're supposed to use them. Use this systematically. Use them every time. Use them the same way so you can be productive. Derek, do you remember what I think was it Dan said? And do you guys remember what said? It's not enough to do it. You have to do it fast. Anybody remember that? It's not enough to do it. You come in school here, you take your time, you relax, you go outside, you have to do it fast. You can't just sit there for hours and hours, putz around with things, right? So do it fast. Do it right, do it fast. How do you do it right and fast? Systematic, guys. All of us make mistakes. The people who we're all human beings. You can minimize your mistakes only if you have systematic thinking when you do the takeoff. Use forms, you standardize. It makes you the nice thing about standardization, Adam, in anything, including estimating, is make you do things fast and right. Not just fast, but also right. So in order to standardize, you need forms and worksheets. Okay, a couple of other things. What is the takeoff? We talked about the takeoff, guys. We'll define the takeoff one more time. Defining your takeoff. Determine the bill of material. After you do the takeoff, you guys have your right now right here, right? All of you are the takeoff. I'm hoping today, not today, tomorrow by far, you're going to move from the takeoff into the bill of material. So you finish your takeoff, right? I hope today we'll finish the takeoff. Tomorrow we'll transfer the takeoff into the bill of material. So we can start assigning labor and material, dollar value and hours for it. Bill of material. So that's the next step. Then we're going to do, after you transfer the takeoff into the bill of material, you guys have 20 sheets to do that. You need to do price. We make sure we have the price to determine and the hours associated with the bill of material. So you have to take off how many receptacles you have. That's your takeoff. You're going to put them in an Excel sheet in a form. That's your bill of material. You're going to assign a price for it. That's pricing. You're going to assign a labor hour for it. That's laboring. We talked about labor units yesterday. And then, Adam, you need to do extensions and totaling. What is extending and totaling? Doing the math. 5 fixtures, $5. Extended to $25 total. 5 fixtures, 1 hour, extended to 1 hour total as an extension. And then add them up, and that will be your totals. Does that make sense? So don't be fooled by the term total and extension. This is just doing the math on it. So take off, take it to the bill of material, price it, and labor it, and do the math. Am I making sense? Derek, making sense with extending and totaling? Okay, so that's what we're going to be doing. Consists of determining the estimate, material costs, and labor. So when you do the estimate, the most important thing when you do an estimate is you are providing back to the material, guys. This is the most, you need the cost for the material and the labor man hour or person hour. That's what estimate consists of. That's what the whole estimate is. Finding at the end how much, what is the overall dollar value of the project, and how many man hour or human hour or a person hour you need for this job. That's the summary, the estimate summary that you're going to get. And then you take it to the bid process. Now, you guys, some of you went through the electrician program. Does not make you electricians, but at least you know a few things about the material. In order to do the estimate, you have to mentally visualize the mechanical, look at that, mechanical requirements and material requirements to complete the job. When you guys doing the takeoff, you need to be able to mechanically visualize a box like this, like we talked, need a cover. When you have a switch, Karen, you need a cover for the switch. You need a switch itself and a box. And you need a cable to be tied to. You need to be able to, when you move through the walls, guys, if there's an opening, a door opening, you can't go through the door to the second side of the wall. You have to visualize, they have to go up, 9, 10, whatever the ceiling is, over and down again. Does that make sense? How the good estimators have to do. You have to be able to visualize the installation. Gentlemen and ladies and gentlemen, you have to think as an electrician in order to be an estimator. You have to think as an electrician, right, Derek? You can't just sit there and think as a designer only. I'm going to go looping. You know, what are you looping? You're going to walk in walls. You have to move in walls or on walls. You have to ask yourself, what type of walls am I taking off? The walls that you are doing, Adam, right now is sheetrock walls, so I can't move through the walls. If I have a block walls, I might not, or concrete walls, I can't move through the walls. I have to move with my conduits on the wall. So this project that we're doing, Matt, the residential project, is a sheetrock wood building. It's a wood building with sheetrock, easy, everything in the wall, right? Now we're going to go next project. We're going to have metal studs and sheetrock, same thing, everything in the wall, but we're going to use the MC cable. When we go to the commercial, guys, we're going to have a block and concrete, so we're going to be using conduits in the wall or on the wall through blocks or through concrete. Okay, so estimating process consists of the following basic things. Let's go through the steps, guys. Directly write all the steps of the estimating process right in here. So in estimating process, 5 steps, Adam. Step number 1, understand the scope of work. You guys remember that? What is required to be completed within the contract price? What do you need to do? Understand the scope of work for you guys. You got the blueprints and you have the specification. That's your scope of work. You are building a complete power and lighting and low voltage system for an apartment building for this project. Next project, the scope of work will be different, right? And the project after, Adam, will be different. So scope of work is so important. Knowing what you're supposed to do. What you're supposed to do. That's your scope of work. Counting, step number 2. So that's step number 1. Step number 2 is your takeoff. Takeoff, guys, is counting and measuring symbols. That's your takeoff. So you're at your takeoff. You're doing the takeoff. You guys are in the process of doing takeoff with your friend chair, right? Doing the takeoff. After you do the takeoff, you have to determine the material for pricing and labor. So you need to determine the material. So after you do the takeoff, how many receptacles do we have? How many switches? How many feet of M cable, 14.2 and 14.3? That's what you guys are counting right now. So up to this point, gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, you guys are done, almost going to be done with the takeoff. We're going to take it to the material. We have a list of material. After you take it to the list of material, Adam, you need to take it to pricing and labor. You need to make sure every 1 foot of cable that you have taken assigned a price per 100. That's called pricing. And laboring, not delivering babies. Laboring here is assigning an hour, a man hour or a person hour into the material. How long will it take you to install this and how much is it cost? Am I making sense, guys? Does that make sense? So we're going to do, that's what you're going to be doing next. So I'm hoping today we'll wrap up the takeoff. Tomorrow we'll start into tying it together, guys. Remember, we don't have, by Friday we're going to print the whole thing. So pricing and laboring. After you do your pricing and laboring, assigning a dollar value and an hour for the material that you have taken off, make sure it's all assigned. You need to do extending and totaling. What is extending and totaling? It's a fancy name for doing math. 5 fixtures, $5, extend it to $25. 5 fixtures, 1 hour to install it, extend it to 5 hours. Am I making sense? Totaling. Totaling, guys, is I have $25 for the fixtures and $50 for the receptacles. You total them to $75 for receptacles and fixtures. That's what totaling is. The Excel sheet, ladies and gentlemen, that you guys have the math in it. You are designers, you're a graduate, you should be able to look into the Excel sheet and make sure that the math is there, when you, especially when you copy, Karen. When you copy through Excel sheet and move things, always be aware to make sure to account for the extending and totaling math. Am I making sense? When you insert a new thing in the takeoff, you have to take into consideration that it's counted for math. The math is there. Adam, does it make sense? When I come to your sheet and you add something, the first thing I'm going to ask you, I said, where did you add the labor to it and the material? And then, is it extending and totaling? Is there math in it? So look at the sheet, guys. The sheet that you're given is good up to 85%. So extending and totaling. By doing this one, guys, when you finish these 5 steps, ladies and gentlemen, your estimate process is done. We move after that into chapter 5, which talks about the bidding process. Okay, job selection. A few things about job selection. Before you take the job, ask yourself the most important, is this the most useful way of my time, talent, and skills? Do I have a chance of getting the job? Look at, for example, Derek Parsons would not go and bid on a single family standalone homes. They have no chance of getting it. Why to waste your time? A C Electric can do it on 1/4 of the price that you guys can bid on. You can't even compete. So before you get the job, guys, you're going to ask yourself, is this my niche? Am I into the hospital, sport arenas, guys, government buildings, risers, or am I into a single family dwelling and double family dwellings and quadruplets and what's not? So important, because time is money. Selective about which job you feel you better have. Can you find financial goals? Can you finance it? Select the job based on, can you finance it? Can you staff it? Can you labor it? So consider the jobs that have a reasonable chances of making profit margin. When you want to select a job, again, when it's low, you almost bid on any job. But when it's not slow, you're going to be very selective on the jobs that you do. So you have 2 options. You're getting a job and you can make 10, you believe or you think you're going to make 10% profit, or another job that you can have 1% profit. So you're going to be selective into choosing the one that's going to give you a better profit. Before you bid the job, what does your gut tells you? There's a lot of gut analysis and history, guys. Parsons and Hunt and Egan, all those stuff go more than guts, guys. They have history. They study the clients that they work with. So there's a whole lot to decide if you get that job or not. What are the chances of getting the job? Stadiums, 5-6 firms bid on it, or contractor versus an apartment building. You might probably in Minnesota get 25 electrical contractors bid on a small apartment building. So more contractors, less chances they're going to get the job. Do you think the job will be profitable? Can you make money out of this job? So these are the things that you need to, do you have the money to finance the job, or are you going to go bankrupt? You need can you borrow money to finance this job, right? You talk about millions of dollars for these jobs, guys, so you can't finance it from your company. You have to have ability to finance the jobs that you're dealing with. Any comments, guys? Any questions about the job selection? These are the things, Derek, when you become a project manager, that's going to come in your mind. Most of firms, guys, they have marketing that they chase these jobs and they analyze the jobs, and Karen, they have a lot of factors before they go after the job. They have a lot of factors that they study, but these are part of that. Okay, step number 1, when we do that bid, the estimating process, step number 1, guys, is understanding the scope of work. So understanding the scope of work, so begin by estimate, must be sure to have the information you know about the job. The single most important thing, know where your job is, all the information that you need about your job. So where's the job? Who the job is for? You must complete current set of blueprints. Before you start your takeoff, Adam, make sure you have your most accurate, complete specification and blueprints. The worst thing that could happen to you, Karen, is you do the takeoff on a blueprints that have been updated. So talk about waste of time. Specification. So the most current blueprint and specification you have to have before you start doing your takeoff. Be sure to visit the job site if you can. The job site is visiting the job site before you start the bid. Before the bid, the job will give you an idea how are you going to manage your labor there. So it might increase if the job site is far away or in a restricted area in downtown Minneapolis, for example. It will take longer for your crews to get in and out. There's parking issues, there's restriction for parking and what's not. So to give you an idea, what type of job are you into? Create the job folder. Estimators, Karen, are organized group of people. If you're not organized, get out of the business of estimating. You have to have a folder, guys. Folder or folders for every estimate that you have. Contain the bid, your bid's work paper, everything that you have. You have to have multiple, you have to get organized. Folders, papers for everything that you need to do about the job. Very, very important, guys. There is something called estimate record worksheet. You have to, or not you have to, but it is strongly suggested that you create and or complete the estimate record worksheet. Estimate record worksheet, guys, is in page 88. So please, if you guys go to page 88, it will tell you what you have to do. And make sure you have it handy for your project. If you guys look at the estimate record worksheet in page 88, it says the estimate job number, the date, the contractor, the address, office, email, the city, the phone number, all this information. Then you talk about the owner, address, and all the contact information about the owner. The job, so then you got your job name, address, the architects, the engineers, the electrical utilities, the electrical inspector, and other influential people who can influence this project. Any comments, guys, about this sheet that you're supposed to fill? Estimate record worksheet. Does it make sense, Derek? Filling all this information, because the last thing you want to do is you start doing takeoff and you have no idea who the engineer in this project, who the architect, who the owner. What if you have? Why do you need this information, guys? You need to call those at one time. You need to have them accessible. So this information must be filled about every job. You don't have it, copy it, make sure you have it electronically. Comments, questions about that sheet that you have to fill. It will help you track your project and get the questions when needed that you need about this project as a reference. Okay, so we got that one. Before you get into the estimating, they suggest going to a quiet place, not like where Chad is yakking at you today. This is not a quiet place, right? A quiet place where carefully read the specification and the notes and the blueprints. You guys designed this system, and you still, Adam and Derek, you still get confused, guys. Is this a 20 amp circuit or a 30 amp circuit, Chad? Right? You cannot take a 20 amp circuit as a 30 amp circuit, or vice versa. You have to fully understand the blueprints when you do the takeoff. Am I making sense, Matt? You have to fully understand your blueprints. Now, if you're not, you guys are designers. I would hope you're not an expert. I hope not, otherwise you wouldn't be here. As you move forward, you're going to learn the same thing once, twice. You can't ask the same question 5 times for your employer. Otherwise, you'll drive them nuts, and you drive yourself nuts, and you'll be on the first list to be laid off, right? So you have to learn how to accumulate knowledge. When you do that one, guys, about the blueprints, you can't ask the same questions 3 times on every blueprint. Imagine, Derek, you're taking off a receptacle, a special receptacle, and every project you see it, you go ask, what the heck is that? Write yourself a note that this receptacle means this. Specification, notes, especially the notes, guys. A lot of people don't like the notes. Make sure you read them. You need to have a notepad handy where you can write, track all the questions you have about your estimate. I have no clue what this circuit is, so write it down on a notepad so you can group all your questions, Karen, and ask them one time to your estimator, your fellow estimators, or typically what's going to be for the engineers, Matt. So you have an engineer that designed this project. You have no idea what he meant by this note. Write it down. As you move through all these blueprints and specifications, write them on a piece of paper, pick up the phone and call the engineer one time. What happens if you call me, if I'm the engineer, Matt, and you call me 10 times? The first probably 2 or 3 times I'll pick up the phone. The second I'm on on a break. You don't drive people nuts. You look like an idiot if you keep picking up the phone and calling people every time you have a problem, right? Organize. You're a project manager. You're estimator, project manager. You're better than average. Does that make sense? Am I making sense? When they say you're better than average, you can't pick up the phone every time you have a question. Write them down and then pick up the phone and get your question. Write them go through the blueprints, write your questions, and ask them at once. Um, get the answers as soon as you can. Again, when you don't have an answer, when you have a question, get your answer as soon as you can. Don't wait until the last minute. But again, do not pick up the phone. Every time you're going through sheet number one, you have one question, call it. Go sheet number two, you have another question, call the engineer. Write them down. Write all your questions. Pick up the phone, call once, twice maybe, but not 10 times. Am I making sense, Karen? Does that make sense? When you're an organizer, project manager, you are above average. You know, if you want to make it. Um, take the plan specification. You must a specification checklist. You have to keep a specification checklist, guys. I have a specification checklist in page 90. Would you please go to page 90 to look at the specification checklist? We have to keep track of the plans and specification. You will want to complete specification checklist located in the appendix. You guys have it, and hang it over closer to your takeoff bench. Have it handy. It doesn't have to be hand. Use it as a quick reference. Okay, so let's look at the specification checklist. Number one, labor units. Specification checklist. Building condition. What are the building condition? Restriction in the building. Change order, concealed or exposed, construction schedule, job factor, labor skills, ladder and scaffolds. All these, can you guys see that notes you can write there and say, yup, there's a ladder and scaffold. What does that give you guys? Give you an idea what type of building are you into? Off hours and occupied, overtime, remodeling, repetitive, shift, team, temperature, weather. Do you guys remember all these will affect your labor units, right? And the price and access to the building. So you need to go through this for your specification checklist and write to yourself, does it have a restricted hours? Yes. So that will help you, Karen, adjust your labor hours later on. So these are for the labor unit adjustment. And then at the end, labor adjustment, you can adjust your labor, additional labor. Now that's for all your labor. So look at this, as-built plans, demolition, energized parts. We have fire seals, and I'm picking a few OSHA compliance that you have to do, public safety, security, shop time, site condition, subcontractor supervision, temporary and or standby power. Don't you think that you have to take this into consideration when you do your project? So what this sheet gives you, Karen, gets you organized, make sure that you do not forget certain things. So what would you do? Derek, have you seen it at Parsons sheets like this, similar yet?
Yeah,
that you,
that full checklist that you do
for
the estimation process. Simple.
Awesome. So that's your checklist. So you have to, every time you check one of these guys, meaning as you go through your project, means you have to adjust your labor and or your material. So here's your checklist. We talked about the plans, working drawing specifications. Specifications are additional requirement you have to take care of. Visit the job site. Be sure to visit the job site. Prepare for the estimates. It has folders, estimate record worksheets, plans and specification review, estimate and bid notes. All this information, a specification checklist. So these are the stuff that you guys have to do before you even start doing your bidding process. Before you're doing your bidding process, the specification checklist goes into direct job expenses in page 92, Adam, and goes all the way into 93. We have other final costs and other conditions that you have to take into consideration: conductor size, raceways, and what's not. A whole lot of things that you have to take into consideration. So make sure that it's accounted for before you do your bid. Any comments, any questions? Comments, questions, guys? Specification checklist. It will help you adjust your labor as you go through this project. Okay, now we have all these specification checklists. We have the job record. We understood the scope of work, Karen, using specification and blueprints. Now we're going to start the takeoff. That's what you guys are doing, right? So what is takeoff? To quickly and accurately estimate a job, you must have forms and worksheets. When you do the takeoff, guys, form and worksheets makes your life much easier, make you accurate most of the time. Um, will save you time, create consistency, and assist you in the reduction of errors. So that's the forms that we have, guys, about the takeoff. A few forms about the takeoff. You're going to see a few of them in here. So forms. When you started Matt and Adam, I told you guys you have to write the color code for the takeoff, right, and write the stuff down. These are your forms. A lot of engineering contractor guys have these as a form. They give it, and you attach it to the blueprints in order to help you do the takeoff. Help you serve the reminder of items that are easily omitted or forgotten. So if you have forms and worksheets, it will help you if you forgot certain things in your takeoff. What is takeoff? We defined this one many times, guys. When you take off, takeoff is the action of counting and measuring. Counting your components and measuring your distances. When you are done with the takeoff, there should not very little need to go back to the specification of the drone. The idea, guys, when you have a good takeoff, you shall not go back to the specification and the blueprints. And if you have to, if somebody's to go check your work, they should have an easy systematic way of finding your errors. That's why we use the colors, right? We color system. So you can, if you're looking for fixtures, you don't want to see receptacles. If you're looking for branch circuits, you don't want to see feeders, or you know what I mean. So you color code the system, so it will help you first get organized, not make mistakes. And if you're somebody to review your work, it will be easier to review the work. Okay, so in order to do the takeoff, Adam, you have to follow the following: orderly, organized, methodical, routine that complete and consistent for each job that you have. Every time you do the job, you do it exactly the same way. So that's why companies, guys, have standardized ways of doing the takeoff. When you standardize the system, you minimize the error. You cannot control a process that's not standardized. I don't know about you, Karen, but can you guys control a process that's not standardized? You can't. You have to standardize the process to control it. When you control a process, Adam, what do? You minimize the errors. How do you control a process? You have to have orderly, organized, methodical, routine way of doing things. Every time you do the job. By doing it this way, guys, you achieve two things. Number one, fast and furious. Shall we say furious? Fast, and instead of furious, and accurate. That's what your job is when you become an estimator. You have to be fast and accurate. If you're not fast and accurate, you're not in it for a long time. Any comments, guys? Any questions? So orderly, organized, methodical way to complete the job, consistent from one job to another, is what you need to do. But you do this by standardization, doing standardization. Okay, use colored pencils, you guys, or pens to identify each items that you have taken off. That's one way of being organized and methodical. I do have in page, if you guys look at please at page 95, they have a color system. Did you see that, Derek? They have in page 95, there are takeoff color codes. So step number one, for the sequence of takeoff, fixtures yellow, switches blue. By any means, this does not have to be the way we do business. We have receptacles light green, miscellaneous purple, circuit conductors. We have pick a color. Oh, that's great. And separate circuits pink, and there's special circuits red, feeders brown, transformers pick a color, service and others pick a color. So you can see you have a list like this. And Derek, you shared with us what Parsons has as their list of color code for the system that they take. This is one color code, but you need to have a color code for when you do the takeoff. When you do your takeoff, that's one color code. When you finish the takeoff, your blueprint should be a colored representation. That's what I'm looking for, Adam, and Karen, and Derek. When you guys are done with your takeoff, for three of you, I want to see a full colored piece of paper. Otherwise, you didn't take off. You just guessed. I can guess anything I want. So I would like you guys to color things that will prove that you have taken it off. You measured it. You did the distances. Colored representation of electrical work required to be installed. That's it. Color. Everything, your blueprint should be colored. Any comments, any questions, guys, using that color code that we did? I gave you a color code. This is another color code that you can use for the takeoff. Okay, the purpose of counting is to identify quantities that you can determine. So you need to identify the quantities so you can put them in the bill of material. That's the whole counting issues. You need a bill of material so you can identify it. Measuring, the same thing. Determine the circuit. When you measure, Adam, when you count, you have the quantities. When you measure, you determine the circuit length for branch circuits and feeder and services. And when we went to, what's his name? Dan, right? The Parsons estimator. Did you guys see what he did the minute that he went to his project? Anybody remember? Verify the scale. When you measure distances, not count. Count, not a big deal. With the scale, affect the counting. If you see the fixture in a half scale, would that affect the counting? Not a whole lot. Counting. Measuring distance is a big deal. Measuring is a scale, guys. So the first and the most important thing is verifying the scale listed in the blueprints before you start your measuring. So how do you do that? You typically pick a 2x4 fixtures, make sure you measure it based on the scale that you're using. Does it say 4 feet? Yep, it is. Or you take a door that's a standard door, 3 feet, or whatever standard door in that area. You measure it. Does it show 3 feet? Yep, you're good. Or best, like Dan did when you guys were there, he took an already dimensioned wall. Did you guys see that? He went to a wall that has dimension in it. It says 11 feet, and went and used the scale on it. Does it show 11 feet? Yep, then the scale is good. The best thing to do is to use a dimension, but also there could be a problem with dimension. So make sure if there is any dimension in the drawing, make sure measure it, verify it says, the scale says what it says, or pick a lighting fixture that we know it's 2x4. Does it show 2x4 before you start doing the takeoff? If your scale is more or less, you will either get the job and lose money on it or not get the job. Any comments, guys? Any questions about measuring circuits? Counting components, measuring circuits, we transfer it to the bill of material. Okay, how do you start? No set of sequence how to do the takeoff, guys, but you have to have a system and you stick with it. Your style will consist of one system and stick with it. So how do I start? You guys started with lighting, right? We counted the lights and we went to the receptacles. But every time you do the takeoff, Adam, you have to do it the same way. You can't just one time start counting receptacle. Next project we start counting fixtures first. Stick with one method, because by sticking with one method, you minimize your chances, or you minimize your chances of making mistakes. Okay, in page 95, guys, it shows a couple of colors that they use to take off the fixtures. Page 96, we have also for taking off the fixtures how they identify it, all the way to measuring the distances. A couple of measuring distances in page 98. You guys should have can you guys see how they put the length right like you did? I request from all of you guys to put the length next to when you draw your circuit. I would like to see a length next to it. That's how you verify, right next to it, the length of that particular circuit. Okay, moving into the takeoff sequence. Here's one sequence, Adam, of doing takeoff. One way. It doesn't have to be the only way. One section, page at a time. That's what you guys are doing with me, right? You started page by page, doing one page or section at a time when you do the takeoff. Then we have start at the service and end at the lighting. Start with the service. That will be the first panel, and end all the way to the lighting. Another sequence. And then we have start with lighting and end at the service. You can either start lighting, end the service. A lot of people, guys, do it sheet by sheet. You start with whatever your first sheet would be, your power or service. Do the service. That will include the risers and the feeders. And you jump into the lighting system, and then into the receptacle and the power and what's not. That's what we did. This takeoff sequence, generally, here's one of them. Here's one that you guys probably have done with us. Is step number one, we went and we counted the receptacle. We did lighting, counting lighting fixtures and develop quantities for the fixtures. Why do we need the fixture, guys? Because codes. Fixtures are expensive, Karen. You can have a fixture that's $100 or $1,000 fixture. So you need to count the fixtures, put them in a quote. A quote is a piece of paper, a form. You send it to 4 vendors. You guys remember when Dan was talking about this? Sending to four vendors or 5 vendors, and they give you a quotation for all the lighting fixtures in your building. So important. We do not assign dollar value for fixtures because they're expensive. We typically send them for quotation because we can get a better deal on them. Okay, after you do the fixtures, you counted them, gentlemen, and that's what we did for this project, right? We did the fixtures first. You guys did it, right? Second, we went and counted the switches. Did you guys what you did? You followed that one. You counted switches. The third one, we went counting our receptacles. That's another step, counting receptacles. Measure branch circuits. Now we moved away from counting into measuring the branch circuits for lights and power. Then we went into counting and measuring individual circuits. These are individual circuit developed quantities for switch gears for quotation. Now this is another important thing, guys. So we counted branch circuits, right? And then we went to a gear. What's a gear? Anybody understand what a gear when you see the switch gear? A gear, guys, any power distribution equipment, panels, transformers, ATS. All these, Karen, when we do the industrial project, the panels, the switch gear that we have, the panel, the ATS, all these will be actually put in a sheet, sent to 4 vendors, and they give us a quote for them. Why? Because they're so expensive. You do not take off a generator, guys. We don't take off generator. We put the size of a generator in a sheet. We send it to 4 vendors, and 4 vendors will come back to us and say, yep, we will provide you this generator for this amount of money. And you typically take reputable, they have to be reputable vendors or manufacturers. And those reputable things, you pick one of them based on typically on the price, and you stick it into your bid. Does that make sense, guys? The codes. Can I emphasize the word fixtures has a code, and gear, where's my gear? Gear also has a code. You take him off, Adam and Derek, as a labor only. You have to take them off, count them, assign a labor for them. Dollar value, they come at the end as a code. You're going to see the sheet that we use, guys, is that we're using is doing the same thing. Okay, then after you finish the branch circuits and the feeders and the counting of the power and receptacle, you get into the low voltage system. You're going to count your component and measure your special system as in the phone. You guys are doing that, television, CAT TV, security system sound. So this is the last thing that you guys are doing right now. You're going to measure these CAT 5 and coaxial cables and 18.4 for security system, as well as counting the components for the security system. The horns, the strobes, the horns, and what else do we have? We have horns for security system, door contacts, window contacts, and so forth. So this is the system, and then we count panels and measure feeders at the end. We counted panels. Typically panels, guys, goes with the switch gear, but then you go to the feeders and the services. Double quantities for switch gear quote right in here. So that's, you go, this is the riser. They're starting here, they started with light, end up with riser. This is basically start with this one. Start with light, this method is start with light, end up with riser. Or switch gear. So at the end, you have to go make sure that all your panels are accounted for in a quotation, but you have to assign a labor for them. So for the for residential project, guys, we have 5 panels. Do you guys remember that? And a main meter. These 5 panels and main meter, we need to assign labor for them and dollar value, or we have to take them as a quote. What we did for the residential project, Derek, so you know, we actually assigned the dollar value for them. Later on in the commercial industrial, I will give you guys a quote. So you're going to go all for a commercial project, Karen, and industrial. I will give you a quotation for all the gear and all the lights and stick that material in your estimate. But you still have to count them to accommodate for labor. Am I making sense, guys? When you count them to accommodate, to assign a labor for them. The dollar value, the price, will be coming as a quote. Why would they do something like this? They do it because they're expensive piece of equipment. So that's the measuring. After we do the takeoff, that's what you guys are doing with your friend Chad. Now, starting tomorrow, my expectation is go all switch gear and jump into the bill of material, determine the bill of material. So, my what I'm expecting, Adam and Derek, my friend, is we today will wrap up the low voltage, count the low voltage, put them in the sheet, and you and I tomorrow will walk and make sure that we add it to the bill of material. Okay, once you complete the takeoff, you have to link it to the bill of material. And you guys have the sheets for the bill of material already given to you. Manual takeoff should provide information to determine the type. When you finish, you need to find the type and the size and the quantity of the material required to complete the job. It's not enough, Karen, to say a receptacle. Is it 15 amp or 20 amp receptacle? You need to buy it. There's difference in the price, guys. It's not enough to say circuit breaker. Is it 15 amp circuit breaker? So you have to be specific. The nice thing about the softwares, guys, is you don't have to worry about that one. Everything is specified for you. If you have a computer so if you have a computer software, Adam, that we're going to be using later on, all the bill of material, all what you have to do is take off the right component and the bill of material will be built for you. Am I making sense? For this residential project, guys, the bill of material, you're building it. You have to make sure it's accounted for as a type and a size and a quantity. When we go to the computer estimating software, Karen, all what you have to worry about is find the assembly, and from the assembly, the bill of material will be generated by the software, thanks God. Review the material spreadsheet. You have to look at the material spreadsheet and review if that's what you asked for. Okay. After we have a bill of material, gentlemen, we created the bill of material either as an Excel sheet, a tab, one tab of your Excel sheet, or through the software. We're going to do pricing and laboring. You guys remember the labor units manuals that we talked about yesterday? Once you determine the bill of material, now it's about time to assign a price and a labor for the quantities of the material that you have, price and labor. So pricing consists on what is pricing? Assigning a labor, locating the material cost, how much is going to cost you for each in the manufacturer prices catalog. Where do you find this information? In the catalog. For the residential project, Adam, in an industrial commercial project, the software, thanks God, has this information there. And you have to pencil the cost, into the price and labor sheet. Pencil these into the price and labor sheet. Can you guys, can you please, I'll give you a break in 5 minutes. Can you guys go to page 100, please? If you look at page 100, it says determine the bill of material. Can you guys see how they have a schedule for you? This is exactly what the Excel sheet has. So you have a schedule. We have the fixture right here, the number of the fixture and description of the fixtures, plus the receptacle and how they are taken. Can you guys see that? That's what your bill of material is. If you go into material spreadsheet, if you guys go to page 102, meeting room bill of material, so you can see they have the sheets. This is your bill of material. So I have a fluorescent lay-in. We have recessed, we have switches, and how many of them do I have? The quantities in the boxes and the connectors that I have. This is generated the bill of material for you. Am I making sense? Everybody can see this schedule, guys, the bill of material schedule? After you take off, the sheet that I gave you guys already built these into it. Everybody understand that. Tomorrow when you guys meet, you're going to be looking at these sheets. Very, very similar sheets like these. Now we put them in, Derek, my friend. Then we're going to go to the pricing and labor. Can you guys see this in page 103, Karen? In page 103, I have a metal box 4x4 regular. I have 26 of them. The cost for every 100 of them is $53.7, $53.70 for 100 of them. That's what pricing is. Everybody can see that, guys? The pricing. We adding the price for all of them. I have a switch 20 amp 120 277 single pole switch, 4 of them. The price is $348 for every 100 of them. For every 100. That's the pricing. If you go, so that's my pricing. We talked about, and where do you find this one in the job sheet? Then you go into laboring. Laboring is not delivering babies. Laboring is assigning a labor unit to the material that you have just did and putting in the price labor sheet. Gentlemen, please go back with me to page 105. 105, Karen, page 105 has a labor sheet. Can you guys see metal box 4x4 regular? I have 26 of them. I'm assigning 18 hours for every 100 of these boxes. That's called laboring. Where would you get this information, Karen? You get it from the labor manual catalogs. Remember that one? The labor unit catalogs that we talked about yesterday? Luckily, Adam, the sheet that I gave you guys have this information into it. Most of the information. Am I making sense, guys? The Excel sheet, these sheets they're looking at in the book are built into Excel sheet. Okay, so one more. I want to take one more example. I have switches. For laboring, I have the 20 amp switches are 4 of them, $348 for 100, and 20 hours for 100 of them. Am I making sense, guys, about laboring, pricing and laboring? Do you guys see these sheets? Everybody can see these sheets, what pricing and laboring is? The tedious work. Okay, so now we're done with pricing and laboring. We assign a price for every component and a labor for every component. Now the next, if you have a computer, I forgot to tell you, the bad news is you guys start with the hard work with Excel sheet. Later on in the 2 projects that you guys do with your friend Chad, you don't even have to worry about this. This will be assigned immediately by the software for you. Pricing and laboring, Adam, don't even worry about it. It's all into the computer. But it makes you appreciate. Using the Excel sheet, guys, will make you appreciate what a computer software will do for you, like Accubit and McCormick. Okay, so we did pricing and laboring. We looked at the pricing and laboring sheet. You guys are looking at the last step, ladies and gentlemen, the last step is extending and totaling. Extending and totaling is doing the math. So we have the material cost. We have the labor hour values. For each, determine the material cost and the labor hours as extension. You add them up. You're going to look at them in a second here. You basically do the multiplication. Once you have extended the material cost, blah, blah, you have determine the material, you do the math. So do me a favor, will you please? If you look at the last page in this chapter, page 107, Adam, Derek and Karen, my friend, if you guys look at 107, you can see the same extension and totaling. Can you guys see that yellow stuff? For example, I'm going to go to my 20 amp receptacle, Adam. 20 amp receptacle, switches, 20 amp, 120, 277, single pole, 4 of them. The cost is $340 for 100 of them. When you do the extension, what is an extension? When you do the extension is you take, I'm going to do this extension for the receptacle. So you take the 4, guys, you multiply this one by 348, divided by 100, and this extended will be $13.92. That's the extending for that switch, for the 20 amp switch. Okay, now labor, guys, the same switch labor-wise. Where's the labor here? Ooh. Okay, switch labor. I have 4. You take the 4, multiply it by what looks like 20 hours for every 100, and then when you do the math on this, Adam, you're going to find the okay. So for 100 of them, get you 0.8 hours. So this is hours. This is dollars. That's what extending is. Does that make sense? What extending is? Then you add the hours to the hours underneath it, and that will be total. And you'll add the dollars to the dollars underneath it, and that will be the totaling. Can you guys see way at the bottom? This job, gentlemen, will cost me $1,800 and 82 hours. That's the extending and totaling. That's the bid summary. The estimate summary. That's your estimate summary. Now, I can't emphasize the reason why I'm yakking at these guys, because the sheet that you have in front of you, the Excel sheet, has the same format. If you don't understand this chapter, you don't understand the sheets. The sheets are built exactly the same way. That's why we use this book. Okay, so we did the extending and totaling. If you have a computer, thanks God, Derek, you will never do this again. All this math, totaling, extending will be done completely out of my computer. You don't have to worry about it. So you guys have to suffer a little bit this week with adjusting it a little bit. Make sure you know Excel good so you can tie it. After that, when we go to McCormick, you will never see this again. But I hope you understand it. So of course, if you're doing it with an Excel sheet, make sure somebody looks at your math because Excel garbage in, garbage out. Okay, so that's basically what this one, guys. I hope by doing it this way now, we know what the estimate is, how much it's going to cost you, what bid is, plus the profit they're going to do. Next chapter, Karen will take it. Now we're done with the estimate. How much? This is how much it's going to cost us. We're going to start with the bidding process. We're going to add overhead and profit, and then we move in the bidding process. Okay, selective. You have to be selective on the jobs that you do. You don't waste your time. Prepare your estimate. How to prepare your estimate? Start from fixtures into the switchgear. What do you do if you don't understand the blueprints, Karen? Make sure you have a pad, and write notepad, and write all your stuff, all your questions on it, and call the engineer once. Otherwise, you call them 10 times. There's a blacklist in the drawer, and your name is listed there. Annoying, Chad. Annoying people, Chad Curdy, right underneath it. So, estimate forms and worksheets. We showed you guys a bunch of worksheets and estimate worksheets. Takeoff is all about counting and measuring. We talked about this. How to determine the bill of material. You take your takeoff item and you stick it into that little sheet that given to you guys in Excel sheet. That's your bill of material. Then you add a price and a labor to it, right? Isn't that what we did? We added price and labor, and then you total it. You add the price and labor and you total it. Gentlemen, any comments, any questions? So ultimately, the outcome of this, Karen, is to have a sheet like this. I cannot emphasize enough that what you guys are going to be seeing when you do the takeoff. I would like you guys to do your takeoff. Make sure you color as much as you could. That's what I'm going to be looking at when I approve your takeoff, guys. If you have not colored your stuff, you did not take it off, or you took it off the wrong way. The proper way is to color and document the way you took it off. That's how you should do it. If you don't want to be an estimator, I fully understand. You're going to do it for your friend Chad anyway, to get my approval on your forehead, right? So I understand estimating and project management, guys, is people who are, it's demanding. It's a lot of work, a lot of stress. Not for everyone. I completely understand. You like to be a drafter and a designer sitting in a cube and mind your own business all day. There's nothing wrong with that. You have to go through this tough stuff with your friend Chad, though. You'll enjoy it. I think you'll enjoy it one day. Any comments, guys? Any questions? So what I'm hoping, guys, I'm done for my week. I might do the last chapter tomorrow just to wrap up the whole estimating, give you the full picture. But what I would like you to do today, Adam, please, is finish, guys, counting your low voltage components and measuring your distances for the low voltage. If you're not done with lighting and power, please do so. Put them in an Excel sheet in the location that I asked you to do. And then when you're done, raise your hand so I can move you right through make sure everything is accounted for. Okay? Any question, guys, about what you're supposed to do? Everybody understand what we're supposed to do? Derek, make sense? Matt, Adam, does it make sense that we're supposed to do for this takeoff? Karen, does it make sense, the sheet? Yes, no? Okay. Is there anything else I can do to make your life easier? Other than say don't take off. Anything else? You guys will go through this one. I know it's tedious a little bit, Adam, with the takeoff and accounting and what's not. When we go into the commercial project, guys, and the industrial, it will be literally half of the amount of work. You will spend more time in the takeoff, and everything else will be built for you. Really, as you use the software right. The first thing when you do takeoff in the software, Matt, is you tell me, Chad, which one should I use for this? Which assembly? So I grab the right assembly for you. Here's an assembly that we're going to be using. The minute that you pick this assembly, you count how many of them, you're done. You're done, literally done. You mark them, highlight them on your sheet, and you're done. The software will take it from there. Cool? Questions for me? Is this a good book, guys? Yeah, more or less. I think it's, a lot of the stuff that we did, guys, if you've been around the block, is common sense. But I've never seen it put in a nicer format as a book. A lot of it, we know it, but it's nice formats and sheets. Okay? That's all I have for you guys. Thank you.